influence on people. And this Kandongyo, Sho Kandongyo, was a part of this story was recorded and used in the Zenkoji Engi narratives. So I will talk about this later. And this Zenkoji Engi became the origin of Shin Buddhist preaching textbooks during Edo period. So there's a long history of this episode told in narratives in Japan. And before going to Japan, let's talk about the geography. Vaiśālī is near Pataliputra here, and from here, the story went probably this way to the Gandaram area, and we have Amida Triad figure from Gandhara, probably around 3rd to 4th century. I'll show you that statue later. And then travel from Gandhara to cross the Silk Road and then to China. And from China to the Korean Peninsula around 4th to 5th century, and arrived in Japan around 6th century CE. And the story of Vaiśālī, all along the way, there were Amitabha Triad. We can find Amitabha Triad figures. So that story was very important in the transmission of Buddhism this route, along this route. This is the detail of that Indian central plain. And here is Rajagriha, and Shakyamuni traveled from Rajagriha to through Nadiga, crossed the Ganges here, and then went to Vaiśālī when he was asked to visit and quell the epidemic. So this area is very important for Shakyamuni's early career, and this route was taken in his last travel from Rajagaha to Kushnala too. And this is the Japanese end of that transmission through Korean Peninsula to Japanese Inland Sea, Setonaikai, to Nara, and there were Horyuji Temple, which has a mural of Amitabha Triad. And then from this area to Zenkoji in Nagano. And now I'd like to go on to the Pureland theme. The epidemic in Vaiśālī and the significance of Amida Buddha as a true and universal refuge. In the first part, I'll talk about that narrative in Doshak's Anrakushu, and in the second part, in the Zenkoji Engi. Doshaku mentions this Shokandongyo in section 8 of his Anrakushu, and he compared Shakyamuni and Amida Buddha in that chapter. This is a quote, English translation by Hidagaki Sensei. This Buddha Shakyamuni Tathagata, after living in this world for 80 years, departed and did not return. Again, when Shakyamuni was in the world, his saving power was rather weak or limited, as, for example, the people of Vaiśālī and tribulations. At that time, they were suffering from 5 kinds of illness. First, their eyes became red, as if blood stained. Second, pus was produced from their ears. Third, their noses bled. Fourth, their tongues became tangled so that they lost their voices. And fifth, the food they ate was tasteless. Their sixth consciousness was blocked so that they appeared drunk. Even celebrated Dr. Jivaka Giba was unable to cure the ailments of the people. At that time, there was a rich merchant named Moon Canopy, Somachatra, Gakkai in Japanese reading. Being the leader of the sick people, he took them to the Buddha. They saluted the Buddha with their heads on the ground and sought his compassion. Then the world-honored one, awakening the boundless sympathy, compassion, said to them, "In the West presides Amida Buddha, and the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, Kannon, and Mahastama Prapta, Seishi. Join your palms with singleness of heart and seek to see them." At this point, the people followed the Buddha's admonition. They joined their palms and sought his compassion. Namo Amida Butsu. In response to this, the Buddha emitted great flood of light. Avalokiteshvara and Mahastama Prapta joined together and delivered a great spell, mantra. Then all the people's ailments were completely removed and they recovered their normal state. It must be noted, however, that the two Buddhas' supernatural powers should be the same. However, Shakyamuni Tathagata, instead of proclaiming his ability, expounded Amida's superior power with a wish to urge all sentient beings to take refuge in him. Hence, Shakyamuni praised him here and there. We should know this well. This is a quote English translation of Doshaku's Andakushu chapter 8. And the Zenkoji Engi clearly states at the beginning that its Indian origin section is based on the Shokan-nongyo, one of the earliest esoteric tantric sutras, which was translated into Chinese around 420 and quoted in Doshaku's Andakushu I just introduced. In the Zenkoji Engi, the story begins in Vaiśālī. This is the Japanese reading of this Chinese characters, Chinese transliteration of Vaiśālī, Vaiśālī. In ancient India during Shakyamuni Buddha's lifetime, there was a very wealthy old man named Gakkai, canopy of moon or covered moon, who was very miserly and without faith. Whenever the Buddha's disciples and even Buddha himself came for alms, Gakkai refused to provide any offering, thinking it pointless. However, at one time, an extremely virulent epidemic swept the country, and this became the catalyst for his spiritual transformation. Gakkai had an only daughter named Nyozehime, whom he had begotten at the age of 51. He tried all measures to protect his beloved daughter from the deadly disease, but she eventually caught it. He asked all the eminent doctors to treat her, but even the great physician Giba could not save her. Finally, Gakkai was advised to see the Buddha and asked for his guidance. Repenting his former misdeeds, Gakkai went to see Shakyamuni Buddha, who told him to face the western direction and say the name of Amida Buddha earnestly. When Gakkai uttered the Nebutsu at home, Namo Amida Butsu, Amida Buddha appeared above the western gate of his mansion, flanked by Bodhisattva Kannon and Seishi, and the light emitted by the Amida triad cured not only Nyozehime, but all other patients who had been suffering from the epidemic. Through this experience, faith was awakened in Gakkai, and he became a devout follower and supporter of the Sangha. He made a life image of the Amida triad from special gold called Embudangom, Jambunada Svarna, for people to remember and worship. According to the Zenkoji Engi, this Amida triad remained in India for 500 years and then moved to Kudara Prefecture and stayed there for 1,200 years, and thence arrived in Japan in 552 and eventually was enshrined at Zenkoji in Shinano Province, present-day Nagano Prefecture. In the story of Gakkai, the incurable illness of his daughter, Nyozehime, functions as a painful catalyst for Gakkai's transformation. A stingy, faithless old man was turned into a generous, devout patron of Buddhism. It is like bits of rubble turned into gold, alchemical change. And what enabled this alchemical change is the healing light of Amida Buddha. The cleverest device in the Zenkoji Engi narrative is the creation of Gakkai's daughter, who doesn't appear in the original Epidemic in Vaiśālī story in the Shokan Nongyo. Her unusual name, Nyoze, seems to have been derived from the following passage in the Daichi Doron, Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra, which is well known in the Japanese Pureland tradition. It is by virtue of faith that one is able to enter the great ocean of the Buddha's Dharma. It is by virtue of wisdom that one is able to cross over. The word Nyoze at the beginning of sutras represent this faith. Nyoze wa sunawachi kore, shin nari. Thus, Nyozehime in the Zenkoji Engi is an avatar, anthropomorphosis of faith, shinjin, awakened in human beings by the power of the Buddha. A beautiful image now standing in front of jail Nagano Station, facing the direction of Zenkoji Amida Triad, testifies to the success of this symbolization. And this is the painting of this Zenkoji Engi, mural paintings of Zenkoji Engi, and this you can find in Unjoden of Zenkoji. And this was painted by Nosu Kosetsu, a famous Japanese painter who did the mural work of Mula Gandaputi Vihara. And you can see here the arms and refuse. This is the faithless stage, Gakkai. And after the sickness, this epidemic of Vaiśālī, he changed. And this is the Amida Triad in the Western direction who appeared and cured the illness. And this is the statue of Jambu Nada Gold, Svalna. And here, Gakkai and his wife and daughter Nyoze worshipping, paying respect to the triad. And at the bottom, you can see the ship going to Japan, is Mount Fuji. So Nosu Kosetsu, he painted the original Mura Gandaputi temple in Sarnath, where Buddha first preached. So origin in India. And also he painted this one, the oldest temple in Japan. And for your information, Nosu was born in the Shin Buddhist priest family in Shikoku. So he understood the importance of this story for Shin Buddhists and Japanese Buddhists in general. And this is his mural painting, famous in India and all over the world among Buddhists. And I will show you the statues where you can find the Amida Triad, which traveled from Vaiśālī to Gandhara and then to Heidage, Pindinsu, and then Shantanshan, and through Korean Peninsula to Nara. You can find, this is the Gandharan one, and here's Amitabha and Avalokiteshvara, probably, and the left side is missing, but originally this seems to have been triad. And this one is the oldest Amida Sanzon, Amitabha triad from Heidage 169 K. And Amida and Kannon Seishi, this triad based on that Vaiśālī story. And this is Shantanshan's mural. This was made in the 6th century, and Amitabha here and 2 bodhisattvas. And this was the mural painting of Horyuji, Amida triad. This was late 7th century. And this, you can find Zenkoji type 1 Oreo, 3 statues. This type is called Zenkoji Amida Sanzon, Zenkoji style Amida triad. And you can find this in Japan today in many temples. So now it's time, so I need to conclude. Recurrent terrible epidemics, including the ones in Vaiśālī and Japan during the time of the introduction of Buddhism, and also in Shinran's lifetime in 12th to 13th century, as well as the current COVID-19, are critical times for all people to take refuge in the 3 treasures. And I'd like to read the first chapter of Tannisho and also Tibetan translation of the Epidemic in Vaiśālī, Svasti Gata from Mahasutra. Now the first one, Tannisho, chapter 1. At the very moment when we are moved to utter the Nembutsu by a firm faith that a birth in the Pure Land is attained solely by virtue of the inconceivable working of Amida's original vow, we are enabled to share in its benefits that embrace all and forsake none. We should realize that Amida's original vow never discriminates between the old and the young, the good and the evil, and that what matters most is the heart of faith, Shinjin, alone. The next one, last one. On entering the city of Vaiśālī, Svastikata, verse 18. May all sentient beings, all breathing beings, all living beings, and all of you know naught but happiness. May all illness be banished. May all seed be auspicious. May no evil whatsoever befall. Thank you very much.